All right, everybody, what is going on? Good morning. Happy Friday. We have made it to the end of the week again. I hope you guys are doing well. And we've got another little detour to make from our video series. I know that we're down to the final 3, and I know people are excited about that. But we're going to be putting the pause on that countdown today to talk about something that released yesterday, I think yesterday in the morning, and definitely drew some attention from fans of pretty much every team in the NFL, including the Seahawks. But let's talk about Pete Prisco's list of top 100 NFL players going into 2026. This video is sponsored by PrizePicks. And Pete Prisco, I believe, has been doing an article like this for a few years now. I don't know how long how long he's been doing this, but I don't believe this is his first time. It's the first time I think I've ever made a video talking about it. We are pretty deep in the off season here. This is the kind of stuff that people talk about, and this is the kind of stuff that people do when there isn't a lot to discuss in terms of actual football related action. So Pete Prisco ranks the top 100 NFL players. And to be clear, this is what he views as the best players in football. Not the most valuable, but the best. And there is a difference. Now, there's a couple different things to understand before we start taking a look at this. Number one, Pete Prisco, fair or not, has the reputation of being a Seahawk hater. I don't know when this started, but I know it's been going on for some time now. Pete Prisco has the reputation of being not very, how should I put this? Not very positive, not very congratulatory, not very praise-filled. I don't know. I think you guys get what I'm talking about here. If you know Pete Prisco, you know, he's not a big Seahawk guy. And generally speaking, when Pete Prisco voices his NFL takes, Seahawks fans come out of those takes kind of feeling like they're getting disrespected. And the second thing is, of course, the fact that the Seahawks have kind of made being disrespected, at least their fans, when it comes to the way in which the team is being talked about this offseason. Seahawks fans don't really like the way a lot of people, Pete Prisco may be one of those names, but there are plenty of other people as well, who don't seem like they're really seeking to understand why this team won the Super Bowl last year, or trying to attribute it to anything other than just, well, random crap happens sometimes, and it doesn't mean a lot. So will that continue with this list? Well, just to start us off here, so scrolling through the list here, again, it's 100 players. We're not going to look at everything, but you have no Seattle Seahawks in the top 10, which isn't terribly surprising to me, and I get that. It is interesting to note, though, there are 3 Rams. There are 3 Rams in the top 10. So, with especially the top 2, you've got Garrett, and then you've got Stafford at 1 and 2, and then you've got Puka at 9. So, right away, you can see why this team is getting so much hype, why that Rams team is getting as much hype as they are. 3 players in the top 10, that's not something that happens very often at all. So, pretty strong start for them. And you can see that this is kind of what I was talking about. A team like the Rams is just getting a lot more positive attention than the Seahawks right now. And there's a lot of debate over whether or not that's fair. If you like sports, then the best way to make them even better and more exciting is using the PrizePicks app, where it always feels good to be right. PrizePicks makes daily fantasy simple. Just pick more or less on your favorite players and build lineups with a few taps. Whatever sport you're into, and obviously we are now firmly into the NFL offseason, so we're all about baseball. We got some basketball, we got some hockey, whatever it is you like. PrizePicks gives you a fun way to stay locked in while you're watching. Definitely make sure to use the promo code HMA. PrizePicks is hooking up users with $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. If you use that promo code, that is HMA. I've had a great time on PrizePicks so far, so definitely get on over to it, check it out, and make sure to get your lineups. And don't forget about Team Picks, where you can pick winners, spreads, and totals on any major game. So download the app now, use HMA, and get on over to Prize Picks, where it always feels good to be right. And remember, always gamble responsibly. Now, I do think it's important to say it's not hard to see why something like this might be the case. The Rams, as they are constituted right now, are more star-studded than the Seahawks. That's how they've been constructed. That's the way they put together that roster. I think even most Seahawks fans would agree their ceiling, I guess you could say, the top of their roster is stronger than any other team's top of their roster. So I can see where that comes from. And I think there is one important thing to keep in mind when it comes to talking about this Seahawks roster. I'll save that for the end of the video, though. Let's scroll through and see if we can find any Seahawks here. And pretty quickly we do. Jackson Smith-Njigba is 13th. So very strong showing for him. They have him behind Puka and I believe Jamar Chase. But I believe they have him above every other receiver in football. Justin Jefferson. I almost forgot about that. But fourth best receiver in the NFL now. Obviously, JSN was the best receiver in football last year. He won Offensive Player of the Year. He led the league in receiving yards, and he won the Super Bowl. So there's nobody who's on top of the world more than JSN. Now, I don't think that he's better than somebody like Jamar Chase. I do think he's better than Puka and Justin Jefferson for whatever that's worth, but they have him very high, as you would expect. And that's obviously going to be our highest ranked player by a pretty good amount. But where's our next player? So we get down through the top 20. By the way, CMC should not be anywhere near here. He can barely run the ball anymore. I don't know where this is coming from, because the thing to keep in mind, and this is something important for us to keep in mind as we look at this list, whatever the player may be, this is a list of players ranked according to where they are in 2026, not what they did in 2025. So to me, having CMC in the top 20 is absolute insanity. I don't even know if he should be in the top 100 with how clearly cooked he is as a running back. Might even have to change positions this year to get past that, but that's neither here nor there. Another Seahawk comes up at 24, Devin Witherspoon, and this is how you know Devin Witherspoon has made it. Devin Witherspoon is not necessarily the player that stands out to the untrained eye the best when you watch this Seahawks defense. He's not somebody who gets a lot of interceptions or a lot of takeaways. He's not somebody that is always showing up in the stat sheet in over-the-top ways. There are better corners than him in terms of just pure raw cover skills, but Witherspoon is somebody that has become so obviously good at football for the unconventional things he does as a tackler in run defense, as a blitzer, that even despite a season where he missed 5 games and only had the 1 interception and did kind of get beat up in the NFC Championship game for whatever that's worth, they still know how good he is, and they still put him in the top 25. That's really strong. So I can dig that. I think that's probably pretty reasonable. Again, we're not talking about what they did last year. We're talking about what Pete Prisco at least thinks they're going to do this year, how good they actually are, how good they're going to be going forward. And I think Witherspoon's going to have his best season this year. I do. So I'm pretty down with that. So let's keep on scrolling, try to find another Seahawk here. Nothing in the top 30. They do have Christian Gonzalez, not terribly far behind Witherspoon. Continuing on here, we get to 35, no more Seahawks. We get to 40, there's Derek Stingley. Getting down to 45, nothing yet. And we get down to 50, and those are your only 2 Seahawks. Now, it's hard to look at that and not feel like something's wrong, right? Like the Seahawks won the Super Bowl last year, and it wasn't a fluke, right? The Seahawks won 14 games last year, got the 1 seed, won the division, and then won the Super Bowl, and 2 of their 3 playoff games were blowouts. This was not the 2011 Giants winning the division at 9-7 and then catching fire at the end of the year. This was not some team that just squeaked in and caught hot at the right time. This was a team that was dominant for basically the last 4 months of the season, if you count the playoffs. Like, other than the Rams loss, this team was basically about as good as it gets after the Tampa Bay loss, which was week 5, by the way. That was a very early loss. So that doesn't feel right. One thing I want to say, though, is that the great thing about this Seahawks team is that they may not have a lot of players on a top 100 list. If you were to list the 100 best players in football, there may not be a ton of Seahawks on that list. I understand that. And the Seahawks you put on that list might not be super high. But the thing to understand is they are very deep with really good players. And those players aren't going to make the top 100 list, but they contribute to a team that wins. Like, I'll give you an example. Michael Dixon, he's going to be nowhere near this list. No punter is. No punter can be a top 100 player. It doesn't compute. That's not how. I don't think that it's possible for a punter to be a top 100 player in the league, but Michael Dixon helps this team win just as much as some of the players that are in the top 100. AJ Barner, is he a top 100 player in the league? No, not right now. But he is a really good all-around tight end that helps this team win very consistently, maybe even about as much as some of the players that are in the top 100, right? Guys like Charles Cross and Abe Lucas, they're not prolific enough to be top 100 players, but they're good. They're positive. They're net positive players that help this team win. And that's what it's all about. That's how the Seahawks have built out their roster. They run deeper, and I guess you could call it a trade-off, although it's not necessarily a trade-off. It's probably better, is that they're not quite as strong at the top. So 2 players in the top 50, I don't know if I agree with it, but I see it. And there's some methodology in the construction of this list that I wonder about too. Like, you've got George Kittle here. George Kittle just tore his Achilles and is going to try to return to football action in record time. I could see maybe ranking him in the top 50 if you were talking about what he did for the 49ers when he was healthy last year. Maybe that makes some sense, but going forward, going into 2026, no way. Not messing with that. But anyway, so we get down into the 50s here, and we've got Leonard Williams at 59. 59, slight upgrade from last year, even though he had better numbers in 2024. So I could buy it. I can buy it. What I don't buy, though, is that he's more valuable than Byron Murphy. I think that, or better than Byron Murphy at this point, I should say, because that's what this list is ranking, better. They both bring very similar things to the table in my mind, but Murphy's playing out of position and still delivering at an ultra high level. So to me, I would actually say that Murphy should be higher on this list than Williams. I'm not going to object too hard to it. I think we're at the point now where Murphy's a bit of a better player. So I'm not angry about it, but I would say that I'd probably switch Leonard and Murphy on this list. And yes, Murphy is going to make the list down the line here. So let's get down into the 60s here. We got no Seahawks in the 60s. Bump down to the 70s. We got Sam Darnold. So they did put Sam Darnold on the list. Behind Caleb Williams, behind Jaden Daniels. I guess I can kind of understand the Jaden Daniels thing. Caleb feels like we're just jumping the gun on, but hey, I don't think this is a bad ranking for Sam Darnold. I think this is probably pretty close to where he should be. I think this is probably about the right idea. He's not one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now. He's not a Josh Allen. He's not Pat Mahomes, but he did prove to not be a fluke from that 2024 season. And I don't know. It's probably about the right idea here. I think you've got something. I think that if he has another year this year, the way he's played the last couple years, it'll probably start to really kick in, and you might see him in the top 50 next year in a list like this. Hard to know. People are going to hold the picks against him for now. And I've said enough about Sam Darnold and turnovers and picks and stuff. It's not it's not really that big of a deal when you're putting up that many points. So going down through the rest of the 70s, no more Seahawks. The 80s, Byron Murphy's here. Like I said, I think he's a better player than Leonard Williams at this point, but I'm not going to belabor it. To me, though, Murphy should be higher than this because he is, in my estimation, if you had to pick one player that is the reason why this team is able to do what they do defensively in terms of living in nickel and being the best run defense in football, it would be Murphy. So that incredible achievement, which I've said it before, I'll say it again, should be impossible, is made possible by Murphy more than any other one player. What he does as a, mostly playing the nose tackle spot, the one tech, it's it's out of this world. And to me, we should be talking about Byron Murphy the same way we talk about prime Chris Jones, because or I don't even know at this point. It's hard to compare him to other players because nobody else is doing that. Nobody else is a 3-tech playing at nose tackle and enabling the best run defense in the league that is constantly playing light boxes. So to me, Murphy should be higher than this. I will acknowledge that. Going through the rest of the 80s here. No, nothing going on here. And now we get down to the 90s. The last bunch. We have another Seahawk, Nick Eamon-Warry. And I think this is probably about the right idea here. Eamon-Warry is going to get so much better over the next couple years because he was 21 last year and was still as good as he was. And he's another guy who is ultra important to what this defense does in terms of living in nickel and stopping the run still. But there are holes in his game right now that I think keep him from being ranked too much higher than this. Maybe he could be a little bit higher. I don't know. Again, it's kind of tough when you start differentiating between best and most valuable, but it's not objectionable. And then you get through the rest of this list and no more Seahawks. So 6 Seahawks in total, 2 in the top 50. I think the main absence here, like the player that should be here that isn't, would probably be Ernest Jones, because he's another huge part of that run defense that is the best in football despite living in nickel. I think the linebacker that is leading the charge of that should probably be a top 100 player, especially when you're talking about going forward here. I mean, you've got Malik Neighbors here, whose leg is made out of string cheese right now. Like, what's he doing here? So when you think about that, and look, they didn't have a ton of linebackers on this list, I understand, but, Jack Campbell, Zach Bond's here. I don't know. I would say that you would probably want to put Ernest Jones on a list like this personally, but other than that, I can't think of anything else that I feel super objectionable about. I mean, I know some people might say DeMarcus Lawrence, but the thing to remember is DeMarcus Lawrence is getting older, and this list is trying to be like going into 2026, right? They're not looking at the DeMarcus Lawrence that was last year, who was a top 100 player in football for sure. They're thinking about what they think he's going to be this year when he's a year older and clearly has a lot of miles on him. So I get that. I don't mind that. But I think the thing to keep in mind here, again, this is how the Seahawks have built their roster. They have a team full of players that are good, but only a few of those players would be considered the best in the league at their position or near it, right? Like, I listed a couple examples earlier, but Drake Thomas. Is Drake Thomas a top 100 player in the league? Absolutely not. But he's a good will linebacker that helps this team win. Is Josh Jobe a top 100 player? No. Maybe Julian Love is if he stays healthy. I don't know. That one, I'd have to think about that one. Maybe. But the point is, these are net positive players that aren't among the best in the league. And we run super deep with them in a way that I don't know if any other team in the league does, right? Like, you look at a team like the Rams, because they are kind of the poster child for being very top heavy. They've got a lot of stars, right? They got Garrett, they got Stafford, they got Puka. You go down this list, you're going to find a couple of other Rams players as well, ranked relatively high. Although you will notice there is a little bit of a drop off here, right? You got to scroll a little bit before you find the next Ram. I think Trent McDuffie was down somewhere in, I want to say, the 50s. And you look at some other spots on the roster where they kind of have some Jags, like Cam Kinchins is okay. He's not necessarily somebody I think they're super excited about at this point. Yeah, there's Trent McDuffie at 52. And you think about players like even a player like Xavier Smith, who, according to a lot of Rams fans, cost their team the Super Bowl last year. In the mind of a lot of Rams fans, Xavier Smith is the reason why they didn't win the Super Bowl last year. He's still there this year, and he's still going to be returning punts in all likelihood if the roster is the way that it is right now. And like actually, when you go through this list, other than those top three guys, and then Trent McDuffie at 50, you got to get all the way down to Byron Young at 82. So even this list, which is a top 100 list, which is pretty exclusive, does kind of illustrate the point here. They've got superstars, they've got super duper stars, but then they're a little bit thin in the stars area, and then they get a little bit thinner even as you move down. So that's just the way the teams are built. All right, so let me know what you guys think about this. Top 100, 6 Seahawks on it. I know it was a long video, but I wanted to get through this. See you guys later. Everyone have a good rest of your day. Go Hawks.